and I'm in Southern California, about 100 miles east of downtown LA in Palm Desert. Our topic today has nothing to do with politics, but maybe it does. It's how to manage in a crisis and reframing the problems to get more buy-in. We have an expert, Paul Falcone, renowned for being the chief human resource officer for big-time media companies, including Paramount Pictures and NBC Universal. And he'll tell you more about all that. He's got deep experience. He's written several books. I think it's number 17 or 18. And some of them have sold in hundreds of thousands of copies and still to this day. And he keeps turning them out. It's terrific to have Paul Falcone as a special guest on this show. There will be some others joining us, joining the conversation, and we'll be right back with our global TV talk show. Thank you. Get ready to learn. I have to push the right button here. Welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. And this is a gee whiz kind of a program today because, as you could tell, it's not scripted. I'm just winging it there. Gee whiz to me today means cutting edge thinking with highly recognized and renowned author Paul Falcone will be in the lead in a minute. And Dr. Ken Lloyd and Paul Falcone are both in LA. I think you're situated about, what, a half hour, 45-minute freeway drive?
Just about. That's correct, Ed.
In LA, that means we live about 2 blocks from each other.
Good point.
So, so I'm broadcasting today from our home in Palm Desert, and which is located about 100 miles east of LA, downtown LA. And the temperature is 81 degrees at this hour. It will go up to 109 today.
Ooh.
Yeah, and tomorrow and the week and Saturday, Sunday is supposed to hit 115. So, meanwhile, in downtown San Diego, where I'm from, it's 65 and June gloom because the ocean temperature is like 60 and the land temp is really hot. And so it creates this inversion till the sun gets stronger or the ocean warms up even more. That usually happens after the 4th of July in San Diego, by the way. Strange weather. What's the weather like today in Ukraine, Chris? Hello, Stephen.
Yeah, no, Ed, yesterday and today, I don't know what it is, but somebody upstairs is looking out for you because it's been gray and gloomy until I got on a global talk show, and then the sun came out. So you must be doing something right with the Almighty. I mean, it was gray. It's been in the 40s, but now it's up to 63 degrees. There's some sunshine, some wispy clouds out there, So
you're in Kremenetz. It's a beautiful picture in the background there.
Thanks. Yeah, this convent is 500 years old. And you know what I'm going to
do? The convent is in the white building or where you are now?
No, I'm not.
This is a comedy. This is a comedy show today, I think.
So no, the steeple back there, that's a 500-year-old convent.
Wow.
So Ed, we're going to call this the Cohen climate. So whenever I get on the global talk show, the climate changes and it's for the better. So I'm going to call it the Cohen climate.
Okay, now that's obviously only referring to the temperature.
No, clear skies, clarity. I'd say clarity. Dr. Lloyd, don't. It's not the temperature. With you, it's all about clarity. So if we have clear skies, clear weather, then we have a Cohen climate.
Chris, there's a song in there somewhere. It's coming to me as we speak about it. I like it.
Well,
Uh,
maybe a Sandy Williams classic, almost there.
Stephen Howard's in Phoenix. And so you must have a similar temp that I have here. I'm in Palm Desert.
Think we're a bit toasty. We're going to be 110 today and 116 tomorrow.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's
wow.
coming here too, in Palm Desert. Boy. Uh, but it was good. It was good. So Joanne and I are being guested tonight here at the Elks Club in Indio. Friends of ours, John. In fact, you met John and Beata, Stephen, when we got together at that bar. Um, so tonight is a rock and roll. They have a disc jockey, and I don't know if you've ever been to an Elks Club rock and roll party, but the bar is not open, but pretty close to being open. And so anyway, that's what we're going to do. Stephen, thank you very much for agreeing to host this broadcast on Monday. It's a special day for me. I'm turning 80, and I assume I'm going to make it. I feel pretty good today. And
Don't rock and roll too much tonight. I look forward to interviewing you and getting your thoughts on leadership, and actually me being the interviewer and you being the interviewee. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
okay, and I want to make sure I get a copy of that program
I'll record it. I'll record it. Don't
because
worry.
then I could put it up on my network too,
No,
assuming that it'll be full of jokes
and you've
stuff.
taught me how to bring surprise questions into the dialogue. So don't be surprised if I had a couple in there.
What? No, yeah. Oh, Stephen, thank you so much for doing all of that. I looked at your notes that you sent me a week or 10 days or so ago, and uh, I could feel that you wanted me to. I could feel it. I know you didn't say it in your description, but I could feel it that you wanted me to do something with that. And so I thought about it for a few days, and then I sat down and then you got that, and you approved it. So now I'm prepared.
Good. Good. Well, keep doing your homework until Monday.
Okay. Um, I really appreciate your time here today. This topic is, as I mentioned earlier in the warm-up, is not intended to be political, but geopolitics has entered the workplace, right, Paul?
Yeah, in many ways, Ed.
Yeah. And it's not just about how do you do DUI. No, that's driving under the influence. The diversity, equity, and something, right?
Inclusion. Mhm.
Inclusion, right. So now inclusion has taken on a new meaning in the world of talent mobility management. Inclusion has finally made it to the boardroom talk of being responsible, of providing a feeling in the workplace, in this case on assignment, remote, psychological safety in the workplaces. And that means including the spouse and family who are on the assignment. For years, the spouse has been in, don't bring me there. I don't want to talk about it. It's not my business. Right? But now, psychological safety has, or the lack thereof, has caused divorce, problematical assignment production, and therefore a waste of money, big time. And because the people leave, quit, go to the competitor, all because of a lack of effort to include the family in the discussions before the assignment gets actuated so that people are prepped to go on an assignment much better than before. One of our guests previously, Michael Piker, and he'll be a guest again, is now in Japan as head of talent and benefits for Shiseido, which is a luxury brand. And he told me and the audience some time ago on a broadcast that in the Japanese culture, is to never let an assignee and family go on assignment until they are absolutely linguistic in the language and culture of where they're going. Because of the loss of face, it might impact the brand by people who are representing the brand on assignment and they're not prepared. Stephen, you for years have been outside the US working. What say you about that?
Well, I think it's great that that topic has surfaced. As you were talking, I recall, I first became an expatriate in 1980. And the phrase then, and it's so derogatory now if you think about it, but everyone talked about the trailing spouse. And it's just like, if you think about that today, how incorrect that phrase would be. But, 30, 40 years ago, that's how people look at an expatriate and their trailing spouse. And they didn't give a lot of thought to that. I worked for a major U.S. financial institution, and there were lots of trailing spouses in the organization or associated with the organization. And the company didn't do anything for them. They didn't help them with language skills. They didn't help them with trying to get work permits if necessary. They didn't give them any advice. It was like the only advice they gave them was, here's the American school. Here's the counselor you go talk to, and go register your kids at the American school, and we'll pay the fee. And that was about it. So it's inclusion's come a long ways now, and I'm glad to hear from the mobility industry that they're taking that into consideration up front rather than a third or fourth concern.
Let's go to Chris Exline. He's the CEO, founder and CEO of Home Essentials, which is an American company, but based in Hong Kong for many years, with a European headquarters in Madrid. And a couple of years ago, Chris had an awakening of some kind, which you can talk better about than I can explain, Chris. What caused you to want to go to Ukraine and build a business base in that war-torn country?
Yeah, well, I think everybody here's heard this before. We are the largest furniture rental company in the world outside the United States. I have operations in 21 countries. We are not an American company by any stretch. I'm an American. Okay, I grew up in Chicago, went to university and graduate school in the United States. But we are a Hong Kong-based company with the EU headquarters in Madrid. But we had a celebrated history with reconstruction and redevelopment. I furnished most of the green zone in Baghdad. I did many of the embassies and was even a designer in Karzai's palace in Kabul. And I set up the government of South Sudan, Juba and El Fasher, Libya, Madagascar, Djibouti, and some other garden spots. And so when it was apparent that Ukraine would not capitulate, and Russia had already lost, then a bunch of the people that were called qualified contractors that have been fully vetted by the State Department, the European Union, and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK, all those things started getting together about reconstruction. And so I made the decision that we were going to participate in that, and I wanted to get out here in front of. So we weren't managing by reaction, because in Iraq and Afghanistan, you go in on the backs of military, NATO or the U.S. Special Forces, and you just are reacting. And so I want to make sure we had a good, solid foundation. People told me that it was a bit premature, and everyone that told me that, I have something to say to them. They were right. So sadly, this country is never going to get rebuilt. And I subscribe to the theory, nor should it. But when in managing through, I wouldn't say crisis, but crisis being defined as insolvency or going into a turnaround situation, or dealing with like Johnson & Johnson and the Tylenol issue back in 1983. Those are the kind of the famous case studies of this, Lee Iacocca, Chrysler. But when you come in with a certain business premise, and you have to adjust that, wholeheartedly to, kind of align yourself with the market, and that's what we did here. So instead of getting ready for reconstruction, we just started to open up furniture rental stores like we have in other countries. And that has actually resonated with the market. It's been a miracle that it has. And our third location will be profitable in its second month, this month. I've got locations 4 and 5 in the pipeline, and we'll have over 100 stores in this country by the end of the next 5 years.
So earlier you commented in passing quickly that the devastation in Ukraine should not, in your view, be reconstructed. What does that mean?
That means that, rebuilding it for whom? Okay. Do you rebuild it for the 44 million people that lived here in 2020, the 36 million people that live here today, the 29 million people that will be left in 2030, or the 15 million that'll be here in 2050? You have 3 natural deaths for every birth. You've got a declining population. You've got Ukrainians, about 10 million of them living outside of Ukraine that probably will never come back. Rebuilding the areas that are most affected by the war are near the front lines in the battle with Russia. Now, I don't know who wants to invest in rebuilding something so close to where this frozen conflict, for lack of a better word, will take place. Anybody that wants to invest money, within 100 miles or 200 kilometers of this new border with Russia, that's a risky investment. So, so I think, and like the minerals deal and all this other chaos that's going around, there are no minerals here, by the way. It's what are you rebuilding? If you're a Ukrainian manufacturer, if before your markets and your business focus was eastward, Russia and the Stans, that's not going to be the case today. So if you are going to relocate your factory, you want it to be closer to Poland or Bulgaria, closer to the markets of Western Europe, or Odessa and to the port. So I think, that's why, and some people don't like to hear that, and they think that I'm quite negative. And most of those people are in Dallas. I don't know why they're all in Dallas, Texas. I tell them, well, why don't you come back here? I'm here. I'm not negative. I'm here. I've invested 7 figures already in this country, and I keep coming back, and we're expanding our investment. So there's many opportunities in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians deserve the opportunities that await them. But we need to do it through the, a proper lens, not some fantasy of, hundreds of billions of dollars coming in to rebuild buildings that no one's ever going to be in.
So you mentioned in passing, before we move on to Paul Falcone, no minerals. So this is just a ruse to prop up.
Here's what it is. There are no minerals, and also even and Ed and Stephen and Ken and Paul, in your backyard, you have some rare earths, okay? But if you mine rare earths here, which there aren't that many, they're reliant upon studies done in the 1950s and 60s, which are confidential because they don't want the Russians to find them, which is also asinine because the Russians probably already have them anyway. But if you take out the rare earths, you have to process them, okay? 90% of the entire processing capacity in the world for rare earths is located in just one country. That's China. And so the US is signing an agreement to get rare earths to send them to China, where all the gross margins are done with the processors. Hey, guy. And so, it's just, but the crisis that you have is, what message are you sending to people? When you keep sending a message of chaos and confusion, in fact, when they talk about 3D chess or 3D Donald, I say, yeah, I agree. Division, distraction, and discord. And that's all that's being sown. And so it sours everybody on wanting to invest in Ukraine. It is deeply troubling to the Ukrainians that are here. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand why people will confer legitimacy upon Putin and evil, as opposed to them defending their right to exist. So I think that, there's without clarity, there's chaos. And this is what Stephen and Ken write much more eloquently about than I. But you've got to have a clear message. especially in crisis. You've got to be able to tell people, this is where we're going and this is why. And in Ukraine right now, who's going to come in and take the money, invest, even, and here's the tragedy, Ed, that even if the U.S. government somehow changed their mind and said, okay, yeah, you know what, we've thought about it, now we will invest. Well, they've already destroyed USAID, which was the conduit of cash for this country. And hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine have been left in the lurch by unpaid USAID invoices. Who's going to trust USAID if they say, well, we thought about we're going to give it a try? Where's the try? Paul, Ken, Stephen, my gosh, I mean, the basic essence, the core common denominator of any leader is you got to be effing trusted. If you can't be trusted, then I don't care how eloquent you are. I don't care how much on the front lines you are. I don't care how smart you are. If you can't be trusted, you're not a leader.
Ken, Dr. Ken, we need another voice here.
Well, I know this will not happen ever, but Chris, can I vote for you for president? I listen to you, so clear, so rational, so calm, so focused, so bright, with the amazing actions that you've taken in your career and your leadership that you've built. Yours is a voice that really needs to be heard and followed way beyond. I mean, I've always enjoyed listening to you. I did not know the population demographics that you just mentioned about Ukraine in everything that I've read about it. I'm very interested in it. My wife and I both have ancestral roots in Ukraine, from Kyiv and from Chernigov. So we followed. I've never read that. And I know you're right. And it's just so interesting to hear a rational, logical, calm mind focusing on this. And I imagine this is how you approach so many other issues, problems, developments, the future. So anyhow, if you're running, I'm on your team. But other than that, keep up the great work that you're doing and keep spreading the word. And I think you'll be very inspirational to a lot of people, particularly young people are coming up in the workforce today to see what you've done and where you're going. So that's kind of my overall take on this. I think already this has just been a remarkable conversation.
And once again, audience out there, not rehearsed. They didn't know what I was going to say. And frankly, I didn't know what I was going to say either. So in my view, Chris, not only today, and I don't mean to butter you up for anything else. I'm not even going to ask for more money. So, but you are an American hero to the Ukrainians. Yeah. And the audience out there, mostly American who will watch this, but also very large audience in Europe, mainly UK. But this message
Thank
will
you.
go
First off,
far.
it's the Ukrainians and their families that are defending this nation that are the heroes. I'm not a hero, but what I will say is I think when people ask me, I say I think the most powerful thing that I can speak or say is let my actions be my statement. If I keep coming back, if I keep on investing, even in this climate, we're continuing to invest, open new stores, honor suppliers and factories by paying everybody on time, increasing those orders, having clarity of vision, being able to do like we did with bringing Isaac Stern, the famous violinist, was actually born in Kremenets. So we had we were the corporate sponsor for that just a couple of days ago. So again, just in giving back, I've just passed the 8,000 mattress donation mark on Monday in our new one of the new cities where we've got a store in Kopachinci. I'm delivering 240 mattresses to the local kindergarten. Those mattresses the mattresses we're replacing were first installed in 1990. Now, as some of you know, I mean, I'll never have children. My husband and I don't. But how do you send your kids? Speaking of inclusion, how do you send your children to a kindergarten on mattresses that are 35 years old. For those of us that are from America, you couldn't even, it doesn't even enter your frame of reference. And the headmaster, the principal of this kindergarten, when I told her a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at things to do for the community, I said, well, why don't I just replace all these mattresses? She started to cry, and because it's just no one ever thought to do that, and they don't have any money here. There's no money. And so when they're prioritizing things, replacing 240 mattresses that are 35 years old just gets knocked further and further down. And so, I think that is a part of leadership, showing that, we're giving back, that we're not only bringing in disruptive innovation. I am a very competitive person. I play to win, but yet I think it's critically important that we are an excellent corporate citizen by giving back to the communities with who we serve.
Leadership, Stephen, eh?
Most definitely. But, there's an aspect of leadership there. And Ken brings it up, wanting to vote for Chris. And I'll be real quick because I think Paul should jump in here in this conversation. But this is so typical. Chris is on the ground. He's like your mid-manager in a Fortune 5,000, Fortune 500 company. So I've demoted you, Chris. You're a mid-manager now, but he's on the ground. He's at the front line, literally in this case, but he knows what's going on. And yet leaders, political leaders, and not just the United States, around the world, they get influenced by people who have self-interest. And you talk about the U.S. negotiating the U.S. rights to the minerals in Ukraine. Well, the U.S. government is not going to take those rights. Friends of the administration who own corporations are going to make money by mining those minerals and shipping them to China, right? So it's companies, the lobbyists, the influencers on this administration and other administrations. They're feathering their own pockets, but giving us a line that this is in the United States' best interest. Well, quite frankly, it's probably in the best interest of 5 or 6 huge organizations. And Chris, correct me if I'm incorrect in that assumption, but that's my view on it.
Well, Steve, I don't want to be rude, and I'm not gonna correct you on TV, but mid-manager.
All right, senior mid-manager. My point is that leadership makes decisions because they haven't been on the front line. They haven't been there or for many years. They don't know what's going on with the customers in their organizations. They don't know what's going on with their supply chain in the organization. They're too busy doing other things, and therefore they're making decisions. And that's what I mean, Chris, you'll like this though. I always say that mid-managers are the glue between strategy and execution. So you're the glue, sir, between making it happen.
It sounds like, Paul Falcone, that this is all about managing in a crisis environment.
Yeah, pretty much is. I mean, Chris, the work that you do blows me away. I'm just proud to know you. I really am. And I think anyone listening to this is going to feel the same way. But yeah, even at a microcosm level, even at a smaller, shop floor situation, leading through crisis is what we do these days. We're building the plane while we're flying it. We became adrenaline junkies during the COVID pandemic. We're still in this post-COVID reintegration phase, which is probably, I'm guessing, going to last about 5 years. So you figure 2022-ish to 2027. We still have issues with supply chain, talent scarcity. All this stuff is still there. We're still working our way through it. And on top of that, we have new challenges coming our way while we're still trying to get through the old. So it's a lot. And as we said earlier, I don't think people can leave all the noise, in this 24/7 news cycle where we're bombarded with this. They can't just leave it on the doorstep when they walk in the office in the morning. So part of the manager's responsibility, or at least part of their purview these days, is kind of helping give people back to themselves, right? Your idea, Ed, of the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion is belonging. It basically says, we want you to be able to do your best work here every day with peace of mind. We don't care where you come from. We don't care what your background is. Bottom line is you're here and you're welcome. And it's in that calmness. It's in that giving away the sense of peace of mind That's all it is. I don't want to make more of it than that. You're welcome here. That's critical. Now, the degree of criticality is different in a U.S. workplace versus Chris, what you're experiencing in Ukraine, and we certainly understand that. But we have these new terms now. This leading through crisis and leading through disruption in a poly-crisis world. They keep coming up with new terms that they're attaching to crisis because the bottom line is, in very many ways, it's harder and harder for citizens of this country, for workers in this country, to separate out the two. And you do see incivility making its way into the workplace. And how do you set those boundaries? So again, people can do their work with peace of mind.
Paul Falcone, how are your book sales going? I read
Ooh.
somewhere that you've sold 500,000 copies of, across the alphabet of books that you have done.
North of that one, Ed, I'm between 750,000 and a million. So officially. So it's good. We're getting there. One day
Uh,
I'm going to pass that little threshold. The
that
balloon will
is
fall in the background.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is amazing. Pardon me, I'm getting some messages fast and furious here, but none of them need my head right now. Paul, you have a slide that will summarize your leadership books. Now,
Yeah.
this is leadership with HarperCollins or American Management Association.
Yeah, both.
Okay,
Exactly.
why don't you go into some detail for the audience?
You want me to show my slide thing?
Yeah,
All right. Let's see if I
push
can do this.
push that button.
Push that button.
Hopefully
Okay.
it'll work. It
Okay, I'll
should.
go there.
Okay, good.
And then I'll say from beginning. So let's see if I can do that.
Yeah, if you
Can
can
you see it,
enlarge.
Ed?
Yeah, if you can enlarge it. Ah, there we go.
There we
Perfect.
go. Yeah, that's fine. So,
Okay.
scoop for me, everybody, was I launched my own consulting firm about 3 years ago. And I wanted to focus on what I like best, which is management training and executive coaching and keynote speaking. But for the 3 decades I was in the HR trenches, I had a dual existence at night. I was writing and I was teaching. So I taught at UCLA Extension for years in the School of Business and Management. I was a columnist for SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. And I would also write these books. I started with the American Management Association. I now sit on their board of directors. I'm happy to say I love working with the AMA. But in 2018, the AMA sold its book publishing division, Amacom Books, to HarperCollins. HarperCollins created a new imprint called HarperCollins Leadership. So at this point, I've written 10 books for the AMA and 7 books for HarperCollins. So I'm getting there. I can see if I can surpass the other one at some point. But that's my background. And Ed, I know these books are small. I try to put them all on one page, but straight there in the middle, you'll see that first time manager series. And I had written 2 books for them. First one that you see dead center of the screen on top is the First Time Manager HR. But the golden one to the left of it is called the First Time Manager Leading Through Crisis. And there was a reason why I did that book. When HarperCollins said, Paul, there's a book called The First Time Manager, and we want to build out this string underneath it, First Time Manager HR, First Time Manager Sales, whatever, will you do the HR book? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And they said, well, could you think about a book that would pair with it? A book that someone's picking up. Oh, I've got the First Time Manager Sales. I also want to get this other First Time Manager book. Give some thought to what that should be. And I said, I don't have to think about it. It's leading through crisis and disruption because we're all in that same situation these days. The pace of change is so quick. And we have to be very, very light on our feet. So if I can, Ed, what I'll do is here, and this will speak to, again, what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. The first thing I always tell people is if you want to kind of become strong at leading at crisis and disruption, you got to get up to the 30,000-foot view. And what is it that the Gen Y millennials, the 45 and under crowd, and the Gen Z Zoomers, roughly the 27 under crowd, they make up about 54% of the workplace right now. But that's changing in the next 5 years. By 2029, 2030, the baby boom will be out. And the Gen Y, Gen Z will be a much larger proportion of the workforce. They're the most studied generation in our history. We know everything about them. So it would be smart for a company, business leaders, business owners, to align themselves with what's important, what are the priorities for these two gens. So you'll see what I have in red: career and professional development, a management team that cares about them personally. the diversity of thoughts, ideas, and voices. This comes out in study after study. The obviously work-life family balance and control and equilibrium. But look at the last one, because this speaks to, again, what we were all talking about just a few minutes ago. Corporate social responsibility, environmentalism, sustainability. They want to work for a company that makes the world a better place.
So Gen Z is basically our grandkids, right?
Or our kids, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, 27 and under. Sure, right.
Yeah. I've got grandson 28 and granddaughter 26.
There's your Zoomers. You're good. That's right.
Remember,
And
Ed, we're not all turning 80 next week, so some of us don't
yeah,
have grandkids.
and then I also have a grandson, James, who plays hockey. He's 12 years old. So I'm thinking this is what I would like those kids to celebrate and not to be defensive about them, but to talk about why they feel these things are important. Paul, can you help with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I always say, and I've probably said it on your show before, we've lost the ability as a society to sit around the campfire and pass wisdom from the elder generation to the younger generation. We're too busy. We're all looking at our phones. It's different. But I think that's what a staff meeting is for. And if it's true that people want to work for a management team that cares about them personally, what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And that does mean making this space for helping people with their career and professional development, helping people with their identity. Managers will be the first ones to tell you, it sounds great, I don't have the time. And that's because every manager is also an individual contributor that has their own deliverables, and that comes first, which I get. Yet at the same time, there's a mindset shift that has to happen. As the expression goes, what got you here won't get you there. The manager has to think more and more about the work that's being done by the team. It's getting stuff done through your people, not despite them. And the problem is so many managers are trying to do everything themselves, and they're working themselves into a tizzy with their hair on fire and chasing their tails, and they're exhausted. And it's like, but they're not delegating correctly, and they're not spending their time a little differently. I'm not saying add time. I'm saying spend your time a little bit differently with your teams. You'll get a lot more out of them.
Being human,
Very much so.
humany. That's what it is, Stephen, right?
Most definitely, most definitely. And I totally agree with what Paul said. I would even add first, many managers, they need to spend more times with their teams. A lot of the people I coach, one of the key questions I often ask somebody I coach is, or I give them a assignment for the next 2 weeks, record everything you're doing. Then we're going to discuss it. And then when we analyze it, I say, look at the percentage of time that you spend in meetings with your peers. Compare that to the amount of time you are in meetings with your team. And I'm not talking about just the one-on-ones, but team meetings. And in those meetings with your team, are you merely conveying information to them that from your other meetings, or are you actually working with them, helping them identify hurdles and obstacles, and are you developing them for their growth? And their eyes open up, because many managers, particularly the mid-manager level, they spend so much time in meetings with their peers, colleagues, or bosses, and less time with their people. And I think that needs to change.
Uh, Ken, you've been on the show with others that was led by Philip Berry. And I think most recently, maybe a month ago, he did this great slide presentation and talk about, pardon me, branding, not just the corporate brand, of course, but the personal brand and how they mesh. So from a communications point of view, and I intend to talk more about this on the show Monday, Stephen, is the combination of how a manager, a corporate person, or anybody thinks about themselves, notwithstanding some elements of the imposter syndrome, but how they view themselves connected with the corporate brand and then communicating that. Now, I think Chris Exline did a perfect job of combining them in his recent words about relating to the Ukrainian people. and exemplified by his policy, very liberal policy of no interest payments, don't be like the hated bank, that kind of an approach. And so what you've just said, Paul, is that people are not the mid-managers, and Stephen also, the mid-managers aren't trained about how to project their personal brand, how to be a leader to the troops.
The funny thing, Ed, even if you have an MBA from a top 10 school, they're teaching organizational design, organizational behavior, organizational effectiveness, all 30,000-foot view stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But no one's teaching leadership in the trenches. No one's teaching managers about, communication and team building and collaboration. How do you become someone's favorite boss? I mean, that's the stuff that's missing, and it's the how. People know what to do, they just don't know how to do it. So to your point, you get promoted from an individual contributor to a manager. Congratulations, I'm here if you have any questions. And off you go, figure it out on your own, just like I did. Well, the reality is once you put someone in response, you make someone responsible for other people's performance, there is training that needs to happen in there. Figuring out on your own, yeah, some people are natural born leaders and it works. But too many of them aren't reaching their maximum potential because they're not feeling confident about things. Even as an executive coach, I say my job is to do two things: raise your level of self-awareness and raise your level of self-confidence. But no one's ever given them this insight. And a lot of people get on in their careers, they reach very high levels of, C-suite, but they've never really had the career introspection they needed to think about what is their brand and what are they paying forward, and are they really focused on growing more leaders? And that's something that I think is missing, and it's not just in the United States. I think that's a global issue too. So if my books did fill a niche somewhere, it was kind of giving people back to themselves. It's making people feel more confident in what they're doing and teaching them how to do this stuff and how to say it, or whatever it happens to be. So just my thoughts.
So there's a message to the audience out there, across time and space, across borders and cultures, across industries and silos, across generations. Paul has written several books. One of them, if I can remember correctly, is 2,600 phrases to use when you don't know what else to say.
Correct.
And,
Good, Ed. That's exactly what it's called.
and Dr. Ken Lloyd has just written the second version of performance reviews and appraisals or something like that. But that's all about what to say.
Yeah, and how to say it. And I think that's so important, Ed, and that's what gets lost. People are meant to figure this out on their own, and it's not easy to do. Can I show one other slide for just a minute, if you don't mind?
Sure.
I just
Yeah.
want to
All
show
you
one
want.
more, but this one will kind of complement what we're talking about. If the one element is focus on what Gen Y and Gen Z want, and that's smart leadership fodder for everybody. The other thing is, what are the priorities of the CEOs? You could do a quick Google search on this and you'll come up with 10 different reports. This one, if you look bottom right, is KPMG. It was 2 years ago. But if you look to the left, the bottom middle says effective leadership through crisis and disruption, i.e., managing compound volatility. That's what led me to write the book Leading Through Crisis. Because, yeah, they want emotional intelligence, collaboration. They're worried about employee burnout, right? All of this stuff. Well, how do you manage these people who you can't see? This idea of productivity paranoia. They want creativity and innovation. Okay, people are not going to be creative and innovative if they're afraid of making a mistake, if they're afraid of their boss. Yet, how many bosses out there think to be effective as a leader, you must be feared? Now, that may have made sense in the 1970s. It doesn't make sense today to make your people afraid of you. You've got, leadership is a team sport and it's through the heart. When people talk about the best boss they've ever had, they start saying like, she had my back. He saw me more in me than I saw in myself at the time. He challenged me to do things I didn't even think I was ready for. She always made me feel like I had a seat at the table and like my opinion mattered. Those are matters of the heart. Those are not matters of, oh, I love my best boss because you should see how technically brilliant he was. That's not how people describe their best boss. So there's a mind shift change that needs to happen so that you can look at this idea of agility and adaptability And the whole idea of accountability. Yeah, these are good top five things. As a manager and as a business owner, where do you rank relative to these, these CEO priorities? And again, are you building a culture that focuses on Gen Y, Gen Z priorities? This is, again, it's easy. It's not hard to do, but you got to sit around the campfire, right? You got to sit in an office meeting or wherever and sit around and talk about this stuff. And then ask your employees for feedback too. You start getting that buzz and that energy going, you can change your culture very, very quickly. You just have to be aware of it. And I think these two slides really help. So those are the two that I wanted to share.
So this is about that old phrase, best place to work. You want Gen Z to say, this is the best place to work.
Yeah. There's a lot out there in terms of programs, best place to work programs. Um, Companies would be wise to research them, give that as a stretch assignment to someone who's an up and comer, but find out how do you do that? Because when you can get that level of designation, you stand out. You give your employees a piece of pride when they say, I work for XYZ. We're ranked as one of the top 100 companies to work for in LA County or in the United States. It keeps unions away, not for anything. However you feel about the union drives, unions tend not to organize companies that are recognized as best places to work. It doesn't make as much sense because they're looking for unhappy employees as a rule of thumb. Smart ways of doing things, Ed. So yeah, it ties very directly to that.
So I want to invite Stephen Howard to talk a little bit about his the current rendition of your coaching, executive consulting. You had mentioned to me that you have some new clients in India, and then you have some clients in the New York area in different setups. I mean, totally. I don't remember exactly the words you used, but it sounded like it was like really dynamic challenges.
Yeah, there are two separate organizations. The one in the East Coast is a pharmaceutical company, Indian-based, but has manufacturing plants in 3 locations on the East Coast. They manufacture quite a number of pharmaceutical drugs, either under their own label or some are brand names that you might know. Those have been more training, and that leads to exactly what you and Paul were talking about. That was training for first-time managers, first-time leaders who basically, as Paul described, get thrown in the deep end of the pool and say, you're now in charge of this team. You'll do a great job, but without any training, any insights, any help in doing so. And, Paul, as you were talking, and Ken, you and I should get together maybe, or Paul, you and I should get together. But I just came up with an idea for an MBA course. And you talked about organizational design and organizational effectiveness. I think we should create a course called individual leadership design, and individual leadership effectiveness. And the individual leadership design, we talk about the branding that Philip Berry talks about. We talk about authenticity. We talk about what you were talking about in terms of professionalism, authenticity. And then in the effectiveness part, we talk about how to motivate, inspire people, lead people, and develop people. So I think that would be a hell of an idea.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea.
The other one I can't really talk about, Ed. The other client in India is very confidential at the moment because they are trying to turn themselves into a large-scale competitor of some major U.S. organizations. So I can't go into any more detail than that right now. But the interesting part is they understand that they need to learn consultative selling skills, and they're smart enough to understand that they're not going to learn it from a 3-day or 4-day training program. So we're going to do some mentoring work with them, and then some training work, and then some coaching work afterwards, and maybe some follow-up training work. So, but I can't go into any more detail than that.
I want to welcome. There's a raised hand, Chris.
Chris.
What I think, this has been fascinating. I think one of the things that I would like to see the 3 of you collaborate on is, since all of you have international experience, coming to these new countries, and we struggle with this with Gen Z. I don't know if it's because I'm 60 years old or what, but how do you instill a sense of culture adapt to the cultures in different countries where you're operating. You can't sacrifice your corporate culture because that's who you are, but yet you can't impose your corporate culture on a culture that finds it an anathema to who they are. And I think that, for people that are going to be leading international companies, that's the really expensive toll bridge. I mean, and help, and Paul, I graduated from one of those top 10. I think we'd be insulted if we said it was in the top 10, but and we had leadership modules for those 2 years. None of those, they all taught about what leaders did, but they didn't teach you how to be a leader. And, and I think, how do obviously all of you guys know the worst thing you can do is take a good manager and promote them beyond their capability. Then you've lost them. And what I'm getting at is, it's taken me about a year and a half here to find out what parts of our corporate culture we hold true to, and what parts of our corporate culture do we modify so that we can gain the acceptance of the Ukrainian Soviet culture. And I'll tell you what, that is a tough thing to do. It's not easy. We've got some brilliant managers in our 700 people that work for you. And I'm not trying to say anything about myself. I don't know how many of them could have done this. And I can tell you this, Paul, Stephen, and Ken, thank God we are not pressured by investors, private equity, board of directors. I don't have to hit any numbers. I can be here for as long as it takes. Very few people can. And so I don't have, the only deliverables I have are to myself and to the street dogs where I feed them every afternoon. And of course, to our customers, getting them the products on time. But what I'm getting at is, how do you give managers the space to learn in a new expatriate environment? How do you give them the latitude to say, okay, well, these are part of our policies and procedures. Okay, you can massage those, but yet you still have to be accountable for what we're doing as a company. You guys crack the code on that, and you'll be the top 10 MBA.
Well,
Chris, I love it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I think you're teaching the course too. I'm just throwing it out there. So we need that subject matter expert.
I'm not. I've lived it, and that's the thing.
Sure,
There's
sure.
there's a difference, and this Soviet culture. And listen, I've lived in Hong Kong. I've had factories in China. My first store, Stephen knows, is in Singapore, outside the United States. I've had businesses in India, the Middle East. I understand all that. It's tough. The Soviet culture and is unlike anything that I've seen. And training future leaders, and also it's not just training them; it's instilling in them the desire to want to succeed in that. They come into Paul, you, and Stephen, we've all been involved with expatriates. Ed, this. We throw people in there. They're initially excited because it's a great opportunity, and then are we setting them up for failure? And how many people within the organizations? That's the other thing. I mean, Stephen is as an expat, and Paul, I saw that you were. How many of these locals are really enthusiastic about the new expat from America coming in, who's going to be there for 2 years, and none of them are going to go back with him if he's repatriated to a promotion. And so, how with regards to leadership, how do you train these people to be leaders? To quickly gain the trust and confidence of an organization. Also, be committed to executing corporate goals, and whether they're going in for crisis, mergers and acquisitions, or like the Colgate-Palmolive motive, nothing against Philip Berry, but basically just don't do anything wrong. You're just in Japan or Hong Kong or China, just don't do anything wrong. Everybody loves Colgate. Don't screw it up. So I just think if you guys could put your heads together and do something like that, I think it would be just phenomenal.
wow.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Paul, what would you tell your 35-year-old self?
You mean
as
like me from yesterday? Kind of state, yeah.
well.
Whatever. Uh,
I think you
give
look
or
terrific
take.
with this
Yeah.
the white hair, this frame.
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
mean,
yes,
it's
yeah.
elegant.
35-ish. That's fine. Um, no, no, no. The funny thing, here's my true wisdom on this stuff, Ed, is it's easier than we're making it. If you put yourself in the as an executive coach, the first question I ask someone, and I tell them, be honest with me, would you want to work for you? And they look at me and they look at their shoes and they look up to the left. Paul, that's a really hard question. Not always. I get it. That's why we're here. And I tell them, you don't have to apologize. It's okay. But just share with me a little bit what your thoughts are and how, if this is, where's the delta? Like you're here, this is point one. How do you get to point two? What would it look like if you ideally get to where you want to be? And the funny thing is, we've got to unlearn a lot of stuff. There's the managers out there, like I say, who think they have to be feared, or the managers who will not give recognition because they're afraid it's going to go to people's heads and they're going to want more money and a big raise, which is silly. Recognition is psychic income. It keeps people happy. It costs you nothing. Give it away generously, not for showing up and fogging a mirror, but for extraordinary effort or for a great achievement. I mean, make sure you call that stuff out. Make people feel proud of themselves. And the other thing I tell people is, look, if you want to do one thing and one thing alone, if you get one thing out of my webinar today, blah, 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 build your people's self-confidence. Help them become more self-confident. They are going to thrive. And you get a whole different level of discretionary effort and you're going to have more fun doing it. But again, we've got to unlearn some of those things. So again, Ed, that's what I would say to answer the question. Keep it simple. It's easier than you think. And you be the average bear. Would you like to work for you? And if your answer is yes, I think I'd love to work for Paul Falcone, then you're good. Then you're in a really healthy spot, right? That's what I would keep it as. To my younger self from a couple of years ago.
Okay,
Paul, where,
so Chris,
Paul,
I'd
where do I
like
send
to
my
ask
resume?
you.
Chris, I'm sorry. What?
Where do I send my resume?
Yeah. Send it to me. I'll take care of it. Don't you worry.
I'll send you the connection. Um, s- so a while ago, Chris, a few months now, you began a program, um, and once again, audience, this is not rehearsed and unscripted. So if you want to shoot me down or redirect me, Chris, please do it. You started this program out of a spiritual awakening one day, uh, about foster homes, foster kids, to give them hope, give them a sense of a future.
No, it's called Fostering Our Future, and what it
Mm.
is, we need to give Ukrainians, the young Ukrainians, a reason to stay here, but two, the mental health issues with Ukrainians is unquantifiable. But and the third thing is, when I'm delivering mattresses, especially in these small towns, you have all of these foster children that have no parents for reasons of war, reasons of addiction, reasons of life. And if they're in these towns of 5, 6, 7,000 people, I'm looking at these kids and it's like they have no chance. I mean, they're all nowadays. I mean, when we were growing up, we didn't have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. They see the lives of all of these other people, including other Ukrainians that are living in other cities. And they look and like all they can do is dream, but there's no way those dreams can ever come true. So what I decided to do is get a program called Fostering Our Future, where we want to encourage and empower children to have dreams. So like one kid wanted to write content. Again, but he didn't have a computer. So I had him develop a small business plan, nothing structured, but just how much can you make? Because you need a computer. Computers are expensive. We'll give you a computer. How much from you will make, and then you can pay for it every month. One girl wanted to just roller skate. Other kids, yeah, and so we're creating these programs where if we can grant a few dreams, a few things, then that encourages them to step forward and do more. Like, and one of the most right before Christmas, I was in a town about 50 miles outside of Dnipro. And this kid he was 8 years old, and he was so excited to show me the karate medals he'd won. And it was exciting. It was amazing. I mean, he was so proud because he heard I was from Hong Kong. He goes, "Oh, wow, Hong Kong," like, and he was disappointed that I couldn't do karate. I guess, it wasn't a part of my citizenship test when I was there, but, but, and then I arranged to have him get private lessons with the Ukrainian national champion of karate. Your parents and says, "Wow, I'd really like to just play soccer." And I thought that's great. Yeah, why not? These kids get locked into some dreams, but then why not let them say, "Okay, so we got him soccer cleats." And I think that we need to, and also the other thing is, I didn't realize, and this is again a problem of executives. We sit there and we go to illimitable fundraisers, blah, blah, blah. It's not until you're confronted with the reality. And I realized that fostering is actually a business.
Oh.
Have the ability to do it. So they just pay people to take in foster children. And, it's a business. Some of these homes, I mean, you almost, you can't even hold your breath when you go into some of them. There's 13, 14 kids in there. But we believe that also if you can, we need to offer a forum for the foster parents. Because if each child has a problem every other day, then every day there are problems. And where do these people go for psychological? And they're in small towns. Where do they go to, have a support? Creating a support network, for the foster parents as well. And again, this is, from a leadership standpoint, I'm not a parent, and I don't really think that, a gay person should be leading everything about fostering children. So I'm trying to bring in the best people I know. I can create structure. I can identify the problem. And even as a mid-manager, Stephen, I know how to strategize. Thank you very much. Damn it, I was my strongest module at school, by the way. Thank you. But I'm not offended by your comments. It's off my back.
Obviously.
So I can create the structure and the strategy, but now we're bringing in the people on the ground and giving them the support to try and make sure that that this gives these kids just a little source of inspiration, and we can follow them as they go through. Again, thank gosh I'm here for the long haul, so we can see how these kids develop over the next 5-10 years.
What a gift you're giving, Chris. Unbelievable. It
Yeah.
is really just very impressive.
It's not
Awe-inspiring.
It's not. Thank you. But listen, I tell people if I have a chance to make a difference, that's a chance I have to take. When we're like all of you guys teach on leadership and coaching, I could have given these kids mattresses, shown the photos, thank you, and goodbye. But if you're confronted with an issue and you have the ability to make a difference and you refuse to do so, well then, is that really leadership?
I want to turn to Ken Lloyd. Ken was evacuated twice because of the recent LA fires, the Palisades, and yet your grandkids have friends who are suffering mentally because loss of connection, loss of knowledge and safety, psychological safety.
Well, with the evacuations, whether it was out in the Altadena area or the Palisades, it wasn't just the loss of a home, it was a loss of a community and friendship and schooling and all other components that help build a foundation for children. While it was obviously disruptive for the parents, these poor kids have just had their lives turned upside down. And there is counseling for them. These are actually not my grandkids, friends specifically, but even friends of my own children. And the fact is that when I listen to what Chris is doing for children, I remember reading about children in some of these East European nations that were orphans And they suffered as adults because when infants, they weren't held enough. We don't really think of that, but just holding a child, nurturing a child, helping a child feel secure and cared for and loved has a long-term psychological impact. And when someone like Chris comes in and doesn't just say, all right, here's some mattresses, come and get them, but puts with it the caring, the love, the genuine and authentic concern for these young people, that as well as any other material goods that you're providing to them really helps them psychologically. When I look at the children out here, it's remarkable. Again, they were home because of COVID and they're getting their education on Zoom. So there goes all that social development. Then they finally get back to being in school with their children, friends. That gets broken. They will need help at this point and going forward. Unfortunately, a lot of them are getting it, but it was devastating. We evacuated, we went back, and fortunately the fire did not get to us. And LAPD was remarkable in keeping the area safe, so there was no looting around here. But being away from all of that when we were evacuated, you can only wonder what's going on at home, but it's out of our hands. So we're just going to do our best each day. As our earlier discussion was going on, though, I was reminded of what I read in one of the first management classes that I took in grad school, and said, here's what a manager does. Very simple: plan, organize, staff, control, and direct. Those were the words. Managers that follow that great training today are going to fail, because where is the empathy, the understanding, the two-way communication, the coaching, the focusing on the kinds of factors that Paul mentioned, employee development? All of that is just missing. So they're looking at the people as resources and not as humans with needs and interests and values and individuality. But rather, here's what it is: plan, organize, staff, control, and direct. Control? I mean, financially, of course, but controlling your employees? What are we doing here? So today, fortunately, I do see a movement toward the kinds of changes that we've talked about, and certainly toward the kind of education that Chris mentioned. Is there a need for it? Certainly there is, because it's, as you've all said, it's not just the what, it's the how. And frankly, I do think that Stephen's approach with getting humanity into this leadership role is critical. I remember when I was working for an apparel manufacturer, and I had the director of HR who, in quotes, reported to me, and she would say, I work for Ken. I would always correct it. You don't work for me, you work with me. And just that one little preposition is a huge psychological difference. I don't want people to think that for me, I'm not the king, okay? And that's out there in a lot of the vernacular today, which we won't go into. But the point is to work with your team and to provide them with opportunities to help them learn, grow, develop, advance, achieve, gain recognition. All of those factors are so important today. And frankly, to double back to your question, and for the young children today too, to make sure that they're really focused on as individuals and to help them develop as best as they can under what has been a very difficult childhood for many of them.
Yeah, likewise, Ken, I teach people to say, I need to talk with you, not I need to talk to you. If I can, Ed, I want to just quickly go back to something Chris raised about cultural, multicultural, how to embed corporate culture with local culture. And Chris, one of the things I've done, particularly with people in overseas assignments, is have them go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because most of the time managers, leaders like yourself, Chris, are at the top of the Maslow pyramid in terms of self-actualization, self-esteem. But often, particularly in third world countries, the people, the workers are, they're down there in the psychological, the safety, the bottom end of the Maslow's hierarchy. And if you understand that, and understand, well, this person's working, they're not working necessarily for a career. They may not even think about a career right now. They're just trying to feed their family. Or they get to the point, well, family's being fed, but I need the safety. And then they get to the social aspect. Well, I come to work because I have friends, I have colleagues. And it's only when they hit that social status can you really start inspiring and motivating people typically towards, long-term thinking, corporate cultural esteem, taking on responsibility, taking ownership, things of that nature. So for me, it's the first step in understanding how to bridge the cross-cultural gap with somebody and align them with the corporate strategies and corporate culture.
It's now 15 past the hour here, and I think we should approach a close. And I would like to ask each of you to take a minute to say something that you want the audience out there to make sure they get. And it could be anything. Paul Falcone,
I've got one.
go.
You ready, Ed? I'm here to celebrate Chris. Chris, there's an element of spirituality, seriously, in all my books. And I always talk about make of your life a gift. And that's how I end them. Not all of them, but most of them have that element in there somewhere. It's like the universe knows you can't give away anything that you don't already have. By giving it out, the universe is telling you already have it to give. I'm in awe of you. I love the work that you're doing, and good for you. God bless you. Thank you for everything that you do out there, because what a difference it makes to live that every day is really incredible.
So, Chris, I want you to be sure you understand Stephen Howard has wonderful abilities to help people write books.
No. I'm not writing a book. I'm not writing a book. And Paul, I don't know you well enough, but this is Esther 4:14. If not me, somebody else would be here. Okay. I'm a
Wow.
conduit of compassion. And if I have been blessed with much, then I'm accountable for much. What I would say to your audience, Ed and everyone is what saddens me the most in traveling to the US or to some other places is this Coliseum mentality that seems to be gripping everybody, and the unwillingness to distill reality from all that rhetoric that's out there. I would just ask people to look at both sides of the story, even if one side doesn't confirm your preconceived or beliefs. I would just ask people to, before they pass and render judgment on a certain situation, investigate it, make your own informed decisions. And Stephen, what you said earlier, you're spot on. The biggest mistake expatriate managers make is they believe that everybody that works for an organization in a foreign country believes and subscribes to the vision. They don't. They want to feed their families. They want to pay the rent or get a mortgage. And they really don't care if you and your family have been upgraded to business class on one of your 2 trips home for the year. I mean, or how your kids are doing in private school when their kids are struggling, in public school. And so we have to have empathy is something that we would hope that's inside all of us as humans, but let's be realistic. Having empathy is great business. You can't, as an expatriate that's going to be there for 2 or 3 years, hope to instill the confidence of the people that are working with you if you don't know anything about them. And let me be honest about this as well. I mean, the goodwill that our company has created through all of our organizational charitable activities is off the charts. So I love doing it, by the way, but it's also very good for the brand. And when I came here, I wanted to make sure that our brand is associated with giving back to the communities. So I would just, again, Ed, I would just ask your audience, when you hear all of these opposing viewpoints, research to distill the reality from the rhetoric.
Ken?
I echo Paul's thoughts about Chris and what you're doing for this world. And it is remarkable. I think my final thoughts on a topic like this would be, it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the stress that's going on, personal lives, communities, country, and world. And sometimes it can help to take a step back and look at what we're grateful for. And gratitude ends up being a pretty important component. And sometimes it's hard to bring it back into the fore. And we really should do that. And to try to look at what's really worthy of thankfulness in our lives. I think the other thought, it was just a quote that I had heard at a religious service. I thought it was so interesting. And it's, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. And that's why they call it the present. I thought, I kind of like that, and looking at each day, making what we can of it. And I sense that every one of you does that, and you inspire others to do that as well, to be their very best selves and to make that out of each day. So again, I thank all of you. I thought the inputs and comments were terrific and helpful.
Thanks for being in the global meeting room. Come back again,
Thanks to all of you.
please.
Be well all.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see you again on Global TV Talk Show.